A lot of people thought that this was a result of Brecht twisting my arm to be here, but in fact it wasn't. And there are a couple slides down, I'll tell you exactly how this happened. So I wanted to start out by letting you know I'm going to actually update you on two companies today. One is Nile Corp, we'll start with that one, and then the second one is IBC Advanced Alloys. I think it's very important to update both of those projects because they're both gaining a lot of momentum right now. So let's start here. Obviously, publicly traded companies, so we have to have the lawyer's notes at the beginning. Let me start out with the project finance update. And if anybody looked at the website after our annual general meeting, you'll know that this is the exact same 4 points that I was allowed to talk to at the annual general meeting, which isn't much. But the thing to keep in mind is that the closer you get to financing on one of these projects, the less you can say. And so what the real cause of this torn rotator cuff was shareholders that are twisting my arm for more and more information about financing, and that's how quiet I'm going to be right now. And I apologize again, the lawyers are very, very forceful about what we can or cannot say. But you have my assurances things are moving forward, and I remain exceptionally confident about where we're going to go and when we're going to get there. So some major milestones and accomplishments for the project, and I'm not going to bore you with all of the bullet points on here. What I'm going to tell you is that this project is virtually shovel ready right now because everything except one last permit is now in hand. The other thing to keep in mind, and these are all the little hints that I like to provide relative to project financing as well, is that the air permit has a timeline associated with it. And once you receive that air permit, you have 18 months to start construction or you have to apply for a new permit. So I hope that you take that as a very strong expression of confidence. Here's the construction team that we have put together so far. I have a really easy way to describe this. To me, this is a dream team. I mean, you just don't have companies like this that will work for you unless there is a very strong confidence level in your project and its capability to produce what your feasibility says it will produce. People like DuPont, Zachary, Cementation, Veolia, Maverick Technologies is basically a Rockwell company. These are very significant construction companies and automation companies. We couldn't be more pleased to have all of them ready to go. If we don't have a contract in place with each of them already, we actually have a contract that has already been negotiated, and as soon as the financing hits, it will be signed and off we go. So we are shovel ready at this point in time. I like to go through this just a little bit. Again, I won't read every single one of these bullet points, but I think that we kind of forget, because we're so excited about project financing, I think we forget about some of the things that we've accomplished on this project, which are very good for a project that's about 6 or 7 years old right now. First thing is that we have done all of the drilling that we need to verify a mineral resource on site that is bankable. So that was a tremendous amount of work. We did full feasibility study on all of the mine plan, the economics, the resource again. We've gone through the engineering, both above ground, below ground. All that work is done. Then we had the United States government declare all 3 of our products as critical and strategic elements for the United States. That doesn't hurt at all in terms of federal support for the project. Now, that doesn't mean financing from the federal government, but what it means is you're not going to have any federal permitting delays or anything else, because we've got very strong government support for this project. And indeed, all of the federal permits that are required for this project are already in hand. So I think that tells you a lot about the support we get from there. We tend to forget about the fact that 75% of our niobium production has already been fully contracted. These are enforceable offtake agreements with 2 different parties. 50% going to ThyssenKrupp in Germany. And we've got 12% of our average annual scandium production already under contract as well. There isn't another scandium contract of this size in the world. So that, again, tells you that the people that are coming to us, and these aren't letters of intent or memorandums of understanding, these are enforceable contracts that we have, that once we start production and we hit 90% of our projected output for 3 months in a row, we are now obligated to sell those quantities to these parties. They're obligated to buy those quantities from us. These are enforceable contracts. Very good management team. One individual I like to speak very, very highly of is Scott Honan. He is our technical guru on the project. He's the guy that has made this whole project shovel ready. He is the most proficient project manager I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And I wouldn't have done this project had he not agreed to do it. So my accolades to him. These three products that we're making are pretty important right now. It all goes to this greener world that we're all searching for and hoping to attain. Niobium, you add about 0.5 kilogram to a metric ton of steel, and you can double the yield strength of that steel. You can also make it highly corrosion resistant compared to normal steel. And those are all things that add things to us as consumers, but they also mean that when you put it into a car, it takes less gasoline to get from point A to point B. So very much in vogue right now with what the world is doing and what governments are demanding. Scandium, much the same, except you add it to aluminum. Scandium, about 0.2% added to aluminum. You get an aluminum scandium alloy. It makes the aluminum 20% lighter, makes the alloy 20% lighter than aluminum by itself, and it makes it significantly stronger. IBC Advanced Alloys, a company that I'm chairman of the board of. Here's some different statistics about it. I think the important one here is the markets that we serve. These alloys that we make and then produce actual parts from are in very high demand right now. Investment highlights, again, I won't bore you with a lot of this. We basically have a copper division that does a lot of different alloys involving copper. Some of them have beryllium in them. And then we have what we call the EMC division. And the EMC division puts aluminum and beryllium together. And that is next to impossible to do, and there's only 2 companies in the world that know how to do that, and we're one of them. And then we added some extra technology at IBC where we can alloy the beryllium and the aluminum together, and then we can actually cast near net shaped parts. So what that means to a defense contractor is that they can probably get their parts for anywhere from 30 to 50% cheaper from us than from our competitor, because what our competitor does is he pours a big block of the beryllium aluminum alloy, and then they use a lathe or a mill to hog it out, as they say, and all the rest of the material that is not part of that part is just waste, but they charge the Department of Defense for that material anyway. So needless to say, the Department of Defense is pretty happy with IBC right now, and we're increasing our revenue as we're gaining more and more contracts on these different parts. Right now, about 28% of our revenue comes from the engineered materials side, and about 72% comes from the copper alloy side. I would suggest to you that by the end of calendar year 2020, you would probably see something closer to about 45% of our revenue coming from engineered materials and 55% coming from copper alloys. That's how fast EMC is growing at this point. Here's our 4 sites. The 2 main sites, one in Indiana, the orange state there, and then the other one in Massachusetts, the red site. The other 2 are just foundry operations where we do some initial alloying, but they don't make any final parts per se at the foundries. Copper Alloys division, we made some capital improvements there. Prior to me and probably a bunch of you that invested in this company about 4 years ago, the prior management and board was basically taking all the profits from the copper division and just plunking it into EMC. And that had a purpose, but they probably went too long. And so copper was capital starved for quite some time. We raised some additional money. We got them some new modern machines that are run by computers. So instead of making about 5 parts a day for some of our contracts, we can now make about 40 parts an hour on some of these machines. And so needless to say, the revenue and the volume of products really goes up dramatically. We're committed to providing capital to that group because they are the base business. They will be a very steady, solid business. EMC is the sexier of the two because this is all pretty new, and they have turned the corner, I'm happy to say. In November, December of last year, 2018, this division was probably generating in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $350,000 a month in revenue. The last 3 quarters of 2019, they were over $600,000 a month. They're going to probably hit $700,000 in February, and they were invited to a Lockheed Martin vendor conference in October of this year, and IBC was named the Small Vendor of the Year because we have 100% reliability, 100% on the quality specs for the parts that we provide Lockheed Martin, and it has opened up all kinds of additional Department of Defense programs that Lockheed Martin is in charge of. The Sniper program is a good example, where they need beryllium aluminum parts, and now they're coming in, they're doing site visits, and we anticipate multiple additional contracts coming in from Lockheed Martin. So my hope and expectation and the goals that I'm holding them to, I'd like to see EMC hit somewhere around $900,000 to $1 million a month in revenue by the end of 2020. Now we've got a company that instead of generating $15 to $19 million a year in revenue, we're going to hit $30 million, and we will be profitable at that level of revenue. So this is an exciting time at IBC. It shows you just on the one part that we have right now, we're making a gimbal, which the gimbal, by the way, is this little piece right here. And it holds the camera that F-35 uses. And remember that camera can take pictures 40,000 feet away, and you can get dimensions that are within 1/4 of an inch. And if you don't have a beryllium aluminum part to hold that camera in place, you will not have the stiffness required, and that camera will just sit there and jiggle, and they won't be able to get the definition on those pictures. So this is a very important part for the Lockheed Martin F-35. You can see the production level is really ramping up. The F-35 is being sold to multiple countries around the world right now. They're demanding more and more production out of us every day. So our growth strategies, and those numbers that I just provided to you are what we expect to hit by the end of 2020 calendar year. We're putting goals in place where I want 50% higher than those numbers by 2024. And if I didn't think that was doable, we wouldn't make those people live up to those goals. This is a very doable goal. You're going to see a very different IBC in the coming years. We want to continue to reduce our production costs. That will require capital, but that's okay. When capital is used to increase the size of the business and grow the business, I like to use that capital. We have a consolidation effort that we're also in the planning stages for right now. This would take those 2 foundries, the one in Pennsylvania, the one and the one in Missouri, combine them and put them into Franklin, Indiana. We get to take advantage of reduced transportation costs, which isn't the big driver. We will actually be able to modernize our foundries. We're getting about a 35% recovery out of our foundry in Missouri right now. We can bump that up to probably 75% or higher with a relatively insignificant capital investment and consolidation into Franklin. So we've got some pretty good goals and ways to grow the company and get it up to that 50% growth factor that we're looking for by 2024.